a live telecast. Please stay tuned.
We are glad to have you join us on the live broadcast of the presentation of the 2023 budget by President Muhammadu Buhari, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Well, he's set to present the 2023 budget before the joint session of the National Assembly. That is members of the Senate and House of Representatives. I am Ignatius Nkwo. Well, the national anthem has just been sung, and then the House of Representatives, members of the Senate, and the entourage of Mr. President are all seated, ready for this epoch-making event. Well, the presentation of annual budget is a very significant executive legislature engagement, and it's one great engagement, especially for democratic systems. Well, the president today will be discharging that responsibility conferred on him by Section 81 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, which provides that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall present annual budget before the joint session of the National Assembly for consideration. And that event is happening here today, and incidentally, this appears to be the last budget President Muhammadu Buhari, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, will be presenting here at the National Assembly. Well, the nation's annual budget reflects its economic policies, priorities, vision, and plans to be executed or implemented during a fiscal year. That makes it very significant. It's a very significant economic tool, and that is why it has a high place in the executive legislature engagement. Well, President Muhammadu Buhari, in his first tenure, presented his first budget, that is the 2015 budget, on the 22nd of December 2015, and on the 14th of December 2016, he presented the 2017 budget. November 7th, 2017, he presented the 2018 budget, while that of the 2019 was presented on the 19th of December 2018. At the inauguration of the 9th National Assembly, the leadership of the bicameral legislature resolved to return the operation of Nigeria's budget to January-December cycle. Well, the executive now in its second tenure complemented that resolution as it began to present the budget early enough to provide enough time for parliamentary scrutiny.
Distinguished Senator, distinguished colleagues, distinguished and honorable colleagues, is the distinguished Senator Surajuddin Basira Jibola in at the moment? Distinguished Senator Sahabi Alajiao, please can you lead us in Muslim prayers? Opening prayers, please.
Parliament of this country. May you all lead us in whatever we are going to do here and hereafter for this nation. May you lead our leaders to do their best to promote and galvanize the country together. May you lead General Muhammadu Buhari to end his tenure well. May Allah in his own wisdom help us to do what is right and deny us what is wrong. We thank you, God, for all you have done to this country. We ask for more for this country. بجاه كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله والله مع الصابرين.
Honorable Leader.
Christian prayers. Heavenly Father, we thank you this morning for bringing all of us safely to this place. We thank you for the safe arrival of our president and other leaders here present as we gather here to deliberate on the way forward for our country, Nigeria. We pray that you guide us aright. We thank you for the peace that we are enjoying as a country. We thank you for everything that you have done for us. Lord, we pray as we continue to deliberate here today, let everything be according to your glory in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Sorry. Well, that is the tradition there at the National Assembly on the day of budget presentation. Two prayers, one from the Muslim and one from the Christian member. Any moment from now, we'll be receiving a welcome address from the National Assembly, which will now be the last before the President will mount the podium for the budget presentation and speech. Well, like I did say, the first budget and the second tenure that by President Muhammadu Buhari was presented 2021, 2020. That president presented
President Muhammadu Buhari, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osibanjo SAN, GCON, Vice President of the Republic of Nigeria, the Chief Justice of the Federation, Deputy President of the Senate, and the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, principal officers of both the Senate and the House of Representatives, distinguished senators and honor members of the House of Representatives, the chairman of the All Progressives Congress, the APC, and the National Working Committee members present, Excellencies, the governors here present, the Chief of Staff, Mr. President, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, members of the Federal Executive Council, Head of Civil Service of the Federation, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Chairman of the National Assembly Service Commission, Engineer Ahmed Kadi Amchi, and his commissioners, Clerk to the National Assembly, Deputy Clerk to the National Assembly, Clerk Senate, and Clerk House of Representatives, Secretaries of Directorates, National Assembly, Head of Security Agencies present, Head of Federal Agencies and Parastatals, National Assembly Management Staff, invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, on behalf of my distinguished and honorable colleagues, I welcome you and your entourage to the 4th joint session of the 9th National Assembly for the presentation of the 2023 Appropriation Bill. Mr. President, this joint session is going to be the last session for the 9th National Assembly to receive the budget estimates for consideration and passage. I will seize this opportunity to commend the 9th National Assembly and the executive arm of government for a very productive partnership and collaboration that have helped to ensure the return of the budget cycle from January to December. Your Excellency, last year, Thursday, 7th October 2021, you laid before this August Assembly the 2022 Appropriation Bill, which was the third in the life of this 9th National Assembly. Today, history is repeating itself. 7th October, the same date, 2022, as last year, you will be laying the 2023 Appropriation Bill. I commend you, therefore, for being timely every year in the last 3 years to allow the National Assembly to work on the bill in good time for the new year. Mr. President, the 9th National Assembly has been consistent in passing the appropriation bill before the end of the year so that it can be signed into law before the beginning of the new year. It is a record that 2020, 2021, and 2022 appropriation bills were considered and passed before the end of the last 3 years. The single senators and honor members are similarly committed to ensuring the consideration and passage of the 2023 appropriation bill before the end of this year by the grace of God. The benefits of the early passage and subsequent implementation of the budget have helped in the provision of infrastructure and other services across the country. Mr. President, our economy is still challenged by dearth of revenues. The main source of revenue to the Nigerian government is oil and gas. We always consider the diversification of our economy as crucial, and it is indeed crucial. The idea of deploying our revenues from the oil and gas to support the diversification into real sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, mining, etc. is now under serious threat. The large-scale and massive stealing of our oil is concerning, as this reduces drastically the revenues available to the government. With conflicting figures, projections have put our losses from this melee at between 700,000 to 900,000 barrels of crude oil per day, leading to about 29 to 35% losses in oil revenue in the first quarter of 2022. This represents an estimated total fall from 1.1 trillion naira recorded in the last quarter of 2021 to 790 billion naira in the first quarter of this year. The situation has worsened. Recently, the loss of our oil has reached 1 million barrels per day. Translated into monetary terms, our loss is monumental and deleterious. The figures show we are not able to meet the OPEC daily quota of 1.8 million barrels per day for our country. Mr. President, I consider the oil thieves the worst enemies of our country. The thieves have declared war on our country and our people. I strongly feel that we need to take the necessary measures to stop the thieves immediately. Otherwise, our economy will be completely devastated. Also, our efforts to provide the necessary infrastructure and diversification of the economy would both be thwarted. It is time to take drastic and desperate measures against the thieves. Mr. President, the situation becomes more unfortunate if we factor in the budget deficit estimated at 7 trillion naira and the grim prospect of its increase to about 11.3 trillion naira as presented in the 2023-2025 medium-term expenditure framework fiscal strategy paper. Your Excellency, we can reduce the deficit by stopping the theft. We can also consider other options to source more revenue for government. I believe that it is imperative to review the waivers and concessions government has granted to the tune of 6 trillion naira. In a difficult time like this, some of these waivers may no longer be justified. In the same vein, we should consider taking off some of the major revenue generating agencies from direct funding by placing them on cost of collection of revenues as we did for Federal Inland Revenue Service, FRS, Nigeria Customs Service. In this regard, agencies like Nigeria Ports Authority, NTA, Nigeria Communications Commission, NCC, Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, etc., can be given encouraging cost of collections of revenues. The National Assembly Committees on Finance and the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning should jointly look into this matter immediately. The condition will require courageous fiscal policy to redress by reducing the deficit, not just to avoid further increases in our debts, but to ensure macroeconomic stability, grow confidence in the system, and guarantee sustainable economic growth. The National Assembly will support policy frameworks geared towards prudence, transparency, and accountability through rigorous appropriation. Mr. President, this administration has been consistent in ensuring the delivery of landmark infrastructure across the country. The last 3 budgets have made generous provisions for different projects. While some have been completed, work on others are ongoing at high paces. The 2023 budget should therefore focus on completing a lot more of those projects. Mr. President, I strongly believe that the 2023 budget should target at completion of ongoing projects, especially our legacy projects. This not only because of the importance of infrastructure to the stimulation of economic activities, but also to entrench the efforts as a legacy of this administration. Our focus on this sector has been exemplary, and the benefit to our growth and development cannot be overstated. Mr. President, we note the government drive to address the impact of climate change and reverse its effect. Though complicated and dynamic, we should not rest on our oars in dealing with issues like floods, drying wetlands, desertification, and coastline erosions. The menace of flooding in many parts of our country has been particularly worrisome. It has devastated homes and disrupted families, lives, and livelihoods. We'll need to take proactive measures to tackle this, and especially manage our dams and other water bodies to curtail the menace of flooding now becoming a national disaster. Our focus and targets should be on how to prevent these annual floods from occurring in the scale that we experience annually. This year, the floods have not only devastated families, but also destroyed our infrastructure, roads particularly. Mr. President, as you may be aware, work on the renovation of the National Assembly has begun in earnest. This is why we are in this temporary facility. Government should ensure timely completion of the renovation of the National Assembly complex because of the significance of this arm of government to good governance and the sustenance of our democracy. Aside from the National Assembly, by the way, Mr. President, let me thank you very much. When we approached you, with my brother, the Honorable Speaker, about the need to rehabilitate and renovate this National Assembly complex, you did not waste any time. You gave the marching order to then let to the NTA staff, let Abuja that sources of funds must be identified to immediately start the renovation. Aside from the National Assembly complex and chamber, there are also the National Assembly Service Commission complex, the National Assembly Library, and the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies complex. These projects are integral to the smooth functioning of legislative work, which is why we will need to pay attention to the completion of those projects. Mr. President, from the assessment of the prevailing situation, our security agencies are recording more successes and the situation is improving. In pushing for concerted efforts toward ridding our nation of criminals, the National Assembly will continue to support the executive arm of government in finding permanent solutions to insecurity in our country. Let me at this point commend our defense and security forces for working harder. There is still some work to be done though. Mr. President, be rest assured that the single senators and honor members of the 9th National Assembly will once more begin work on the 2023 budget immediately. As usual, we shall be guided by an utmost sense of duty, responsibility, equity, fairness, justice, and patriotism in the interest of posterity. On this note, it is now my singular honor and privilege to invite His Excellency, Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, to present the 2023 budget estimates to the joint session of the National Assembly. Thank you all for your kind attention. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Your Excellency, the Vice President, the President of the Senate, Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the governors present, members of the National Assembly, members of the Federal Executive Council, the National Chairman, APC, senior government officials, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here today to present the 2023 budget proposals at this joint session of the National Assembly. This is the last time I will be laying the budget of the federal government of Nigeria before the National Assembly. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, as I address this joint session on the budget for the last time, let me highlight some of the progress that we have made in the last 7.5 years in just two important areas of critical infrastructure and good governance. We have made transformational investments in infrastructure, notably establishing the Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria in 2021, seed capital of 1 trillion naira from the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, and the Africa Finance Corporation. Leveraging finance through the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority into Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund to facilitate the accelerated completion of the second Niger Bridge, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and the Abuja-Kano Road. C, through the Road Infrastructure Tax Credit Scheme pursuant to Executive Order Number 7 of 2019, incentivized responsible companies to invest billions of naira in constructing over 1,500 kilometers critical roads in key economic corridors. Under this scheme, the Dangote Group has substantially completed the reconstruction of 34 kilometers Apapa, Oworo, Koshoki, Ojota Expressway and the 43 kilometers of Vajana Kaba Road. Similarly, Nigerian LNG Limited is on track to complete the 38-kilometer Bodo Boni Road and Bridges project by the end of 2023. Investing significantly to restore our national railways, completing the commissioning the 156-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan standard gauge rail and its 8.72-kilometer extension to Lagos Port, the 186-kilometer Abuja-Kaduna standard gauge rail and 327-kilometer Itape-Wari standard gauge rail. I have leveraged over billions of United States dollars in concessional and funds from our partner of the World Bank International Finance Corporation, African Development Bank, JICA, as well as through the Central Bank of Nigeria, working with Finance Ministry to support the power sector and reforms. The Central Bank has also been impactful in intervention to roll out over 1 million meters to on-grid consumers, creating much-needed jobs in assembly and installation. Our financing interventions have recently been complemented with the takeover of 4 electricity distribution companies and the constitution of the board of the Nigerian Electricity Liability Company. On the generation side, we have made significant investments in the incremental 4,000 megawatts of power generating assets, including Zungeru Hydro, Kashimbila Hydro, Afam 3 Fast Power, Kudenda Kaduna Power Plant, the Opara Phase 2 Plant, the Dangote Refinery Power Plant, and others. Our generation efforts are making the transition from a reliance on oil and diesel to gas as a transitional fuel, as well as environmentally friendly solar and hydro sources. Under the Energizing Education Program, we have commissioned solar and gas power solutions at federal universities and teaching hospitals at Kano, Ibonyi, Bauchi, and the Delta states. Similarly, our Energizing Economies program has taken clean, sustainable power solutions to the Sabongari market in Kano, Aruria market in Aba, and the Sura shopping complex in Lagos. In terms of good governance, one significant challenge this administration met at our inception was the inability of successive governments to institutionalize reforms to ensure their sustainability. We inherited an archaic set of corporate, banking, and capital market laws, draft but unenacted bills to reform the critical petroleum sector, and unimplemented Orosanye white paper to reform our civil service, among others. I was therefore committed at the onset of this administration's good governance and fighting corruption reforms to focus on the much neglected area of law reforms to bequeath a better legacy to the succeeding administration than the one we met. Our innovative, encompassing, and historically significant legislative interventions include a critical corporate and financial laws to enhance our country's global competitiveness, including the repeal and reenactment of Companies and Allies Matters Act 2020, the first comprehensive reform since 1990, enacting the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission Bill, the first legislation in Nigeria's history focused on curbing anti-competition practices, establishing the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, repealing and reenacting the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act 2020, enacting the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria Amendment Acts of 2019 and 2021, enabling the Credit Reporting Act 2017 and the Secured Transactions in Movable Assets Act 2017, to mention our major legislative interventions. Fundamental anti-corruption and the anti-money laundering and financial intelligence laws, such as the Nigerian Police Act 2020, being the first comprehensive reform of police legislation since the Police Act of 1943. The Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit Act 2017, which resolved the long-standing impediments to Nigeria's full participation in the global efforts to combat illicit financing of terrorism and crime under the auspices of the Global Egmont Group. The Money Laundering Prevention and Extinction Act 2022, the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022, Proceeds of Crime Recovery and Management Act 2022, Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act 2019, Nigerian Correctional Services Act 2019, Suppression of Piracy and Other Maritime Act 2019, amongst others. Historic reforms to our constitutional and other public laws, including the first ever amendment to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to support the engagement of young persons in our politics by passing Not Too Young to Run legislation, as well as to improve the funding and the independence of state legislatures and judiciaries, and acting overdue reform through the Electoral Act 2022. Finally, enacting into law the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 after close to 2 decades of drastic debates and delays, leading to the commercialization of NNPC Limited and other much needed reforms to our energy sector. This important law also complements other landmark legislations such as the Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Production Sharing Contract Act 1993, Amendment Act 2019, to increase oil and gas revenues accruing to the Federation. Enacting Annual Finance Act of 2019, 2020, and 2021 to support our annual budgets and respond to emerging tax, fiscal, and economic issues, including 1. Reducing headline corporate tax rates for small and medium-sized enterprises. 2. Reforming active tax legislation in line with global best practices to combat base erosion and transfer pricing. And 3. Reforming the taxation of securities, lending, and real estate investment trusts to spur increased investment on our capital markets. And 4. Empowering the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the Nigerian Customs Service to optimize their use of technology to more efficiently collect taxes and levies, and 5, increasing VAT revenues predominantly to support our states and local governments' precious finances during and after the impact of coronavirus pandemic on the economy. Furthermore, we have issued 11 presidential executive orders on a range of important issues, including the promotion of transparency and efficiency in the business environment 2017, promoting local procurement by government agencies 2017, the submission of annual budgetary estimate by all statutory and non-statutory agencies, including incorporated companies wholly owned by the federal government of Nigeria 2017, the voluntary assets and income declaration scheme 2017, planning and execution of projects, promotion of Nigerian content in contrast, science, engineering, and technology 2018, the voluntary offshore assets regularization scheme 2018, open defecation and enhanced sanitation 2019, the innovative road infrastructure development and refurbishment investment tax scheme 2019, and the national public buildings maintenance 2022. We would not have made this historical achievement without the exceptional partnership this administration has had with the leadership and members of the National Assembly. So may I pause here. We want to again thank the Senate and the House of Representatives for their engagement, support, and contribution to these successes, which history will remember us all favorably for. The 2023 budget was prepared amidst a very challenging world economy that is weakened by the lingering effects of the coronavirus pandemic, high inflation, high crude oil prices, resulting in huge costs of PMS subsidy and negative spillover effects of Russia-Ukraine war. Many economies around the world are currently contending with fiscal instability, slow growth, food crisis, and high interest rates. Like many other countries, our economy faces headwinds from low revenues, high inflation, exchange rate depreciation, and insecurity. However, Nigeria's real gross domestic product grew by 3.54% in the second quarter of 2022, making the seventh consecutive quarter of growth. Our interventions and reflationary measures have been very effective and impactful. We must, however, continue to work towards achieving much higher levels of growth, especially given our high population growth rate, so that the average Nigerian can truly feel the impact of planned economic growth. Distinguished senators and honorable members, despite continuing efforts, underemployment, and poverty rates remain high. We are currently implementing several skills development programs and work opportunity programs to enhance the employability of our youth and tackle the prevalent level of youth unemployment. While it is evident that our economy still faces significant challenges that could have happened without the implementation of some of the measures we introduced, would have been much worse for the country. Distinguished and honorable members of the National Assembly, the implementation of the 2022 budget of economic growth and sustainability commenced on the first day of the year. It was, however, necessary to forward an amended budget proposal to address some exigent issues, especially the significant increase in fuel subsidy. The amended 2022 budget was based on a benchmark oil price of 73 United States dollars per barrel, oil production of 1.60 million barrels per day, and exchange rate of 410.15 naira to United States dollar. As at 31st July 2022, federal government's retained revenue was 3.6 trillion naira, excluding the revenue of government-owned enterprises. Thus, revenue collection was only 63% of our target, largely due to underperformance of oil and gas revenue sources. Despite higher oil prices in 2022, oil revenue was below target due to significant oil production shortfalls and high petrol subsidy costs resulting from the significant rise in crude prices, which ultimately increased CMS prices worldwide. Oil output stood at an average of 1.30 million barrels per day as at June 2022, while the sum of 1.59 trillion naira was spent on fuel subsidy between January and June 2022. The NNPC, working in collaboration with security and other relevant agencies, is putting in place additional measures to curb the incidence of pipeline vandalism and crude oil theft in order to meet our crude oil production quota. On the expenditure side, the sum of 8.29 trillion naira had been spent by July 31st, 2022, out of the total appropriation of 17.32 trillion naira. Despite our revenue challenges, we have consistently met our debt service commitments. Staff salaries and statutory transfers have also been paid as and when due. Total mandatory current expenditure in January to July 2002 was 3.24 trillion naira, of which 2.87 trillion naira was for salaries, pensions, and overheads. A total of 3.09 trillion naira was spent on debt service obligations during the period. Furthermore, about 1.48 trillion naira had been released to NDAs for capital expenditure as at the end of July 2022. I am pleased to inform you that we expect to fund MDAs, that's Ministry, Department, and Agencies, capital budget fully by the end of fiscal year 2022. To further address structural problems in the economy and drive growth, capital releases thus far have been prioritized in favor of critical ongoing projects in the power, roads, rail, agriculture, as well as health and education sectors. As at the end of July 2022, the fiscal operations of the federal government resulted in an estimated budget deficit of 4.63 trillion naira. Deficit 4.6 trillion naira. This represents 63% of the estimated deficit for the full year. This is largely attributable to revenue shortfalls and higher debt service obligations resulting from rising debt levels and interest rates. The deficit was mainly financed through domestic borrowing amounting to 4.2 trillion naira, internal borrowing 4.4 trillion naira. Hence, total public debt stock increased from 39.6 trillion naira at the end of December 2021 to 42.8 trillion naira as at the end of June 2022. However, our debt position remains within cautious and acceptable limits compared to peer countries. As at the end of June 2022, total public debt is within our self-imposed limit of 40% of GDP, which is significantly below the 55% international threshold for comparator countries and a global average of 99% post-coronavirus. Nonetheless, our debt service to revenue ratio needs close attention. The current low revenue performance of government as reflected in the low revenue to GDP ratio of just about 8%. Our medium-term objective remains to raise this ratio to 15%, at which the debt service to revenue ratio will cease to be a concern. Mr. Senate President, and Right Honorable Speaker, revenue shortfalls remain the greatest threat to Nigeria's fiscal viability. We have therefore accelerated efforts toward ensuring that all taxable Nigerians declare their income from all sources and pay taxes due to the appropriate authorities. We are also monitoring the internally generated revenue of ministries, departments, and agencies to ensure they are appropriately accounted for and limited to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The 58% cost-to-income ratio in the Finance Act 2020 has significantly improved operating surplus remittances by government-owned enterprises. I therefore solicit the continuing cooperation of the National Assembly in enforcing the legal provision and other prudential guidelines imposed on the government-owned enterprises during the consideration of the budget proposals of the government-owned enterprises. I am happy to report that the revenue collection and expenditure management reforms we are implementing are yielding positive results, with recent significant improvements in non-oil revenue performance. However, while we continue to implement revenue administration reforms and improve our collection efficiency, we urgently need to find new ways of generating revenue. As we seek to grow our government revenues, we must also focus on the efficiency of utilization of our limited resources. Critical steps we are taking include immediate implementation of additional measures towards reducing the cost of governance and the discontinuation of fuel subsidy in 2023 as announced earlier. We are, however, mindful of the fact that reducing government spending too drastically can be socially destabilizing. And so we'll continue to implement programs to support the more vulnerable segments of the society. Petrol subsidy has been a recurring and controversial public policy issue in our country since the early 80s. However, its current fiscal impact has clearly shown that the policy is unsustainable. As a country, we must now control this issue, taking cognizance of the need to provide safety nets to cushion the attendant effects on some segments of society. Over the last year, this administration has implemented several priority projects. Our focus has been on the completion of key road and rail projects, the effective implementation of power sector projects, the provision of clean water, construction of irrigation infrastructure and dams across the country, and critical health projects such as upgrading primary health care centers across the 6 geopolitical zones. We have also gone further on the implementation of several power generation, transmission, and distribution projects, as well as off-grid solutions, all aimed towards achieving the national goal of optimizing power supply by 2025. In the determination to ramp up grid electricity supply to at least 7,000 megawatts by 2024, we have procured purpose-built critical power equipment under the Presidential Power Initiative with Siemens, as we promised. These projects will have multiplier effect on the economy. Under the road infrastructure tax credit scheme, we are undertaking the construction and rehabilitation of over 2,000 kilometers of roads and bridges nationwide to be financed by the grant of tax credits to investing primary companies. As I have mentioned earlier, we have made appreciable progress in the rehabilitation and reconstruction of key road networks like the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Abuja, Kaduna, Kano Expressway, and the East-West Road in Niger Delta. Work has also reached completion stage on the Apapa or Kosoki Expressway, Loko Oweto Bridge, and the second Niger Bridge. We hope to commission this project before the end of our tenure in 2023. Furthermore, we have awarded several contracts to rehabilitate, reconstruct, and construct major arterial roads to reduce the hardship to commuters and increase economic activity. Regarding personnel costs, we have extended the coverage of the integrated payroll and personnel information system to all ministries, departments, and agencies to automate personnel records and the process by which salaries are paid and eliminate the incidence of ghost workers. The system is currently being reviewed to enhance its functionality and applicability to MDAs in the different sectors. Distinguished senators and honorable members, although we have recorded more achievements over the last year, I will now proceed with a review with an overview of the 2023 proposal. The 2023 budget proposal is the 8th and final budget of this administration. It reflects the serious challenges currently facing our country, key reforms necessary to address them, and imperatives to achieve higher, more inclusive, diversified, and sustainable growth. The expenditure policy of government in 2023 is designed to achieve the strategic objectives of National Development Plan 2021 to 2025, including microeconomic stability, human development, food security, improved business environment, energy sufficiency, improving transport infrastructure, and promoting industrialization focusing on small and medium-scale enterprises. Against the backdrop of the challenging global and domestic economic environment, it is imperative that we strengthen our macroeconomic environment and address subsisting challenges as a country. The 2023 appropriation, therefore, is a budget of fiscal sustainability and transition. Our principal objective in 2023 is to maintain fiscal stability and ensure smooth transition to the incoming administration. Distinguished members of the National Assembly, the 2023 to 2025 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper sets out the parameters for the 2023 budget as follows. A, oil price benchmark of 70 United States dollars per barrel. B, daily oil production estimate of 1.69 million barrels, inclusive condensates, and of 300,000 to 400,000 barrels per day. C, exchange rate of 435.57 naira per United States dollar, and D, projected GDP growth rate of 3.75% and 17.16% inflation rate. Based on these fiscal assumptions and parameters, total federally collected revenue is estimated at 16.87 trillion naira in 2023. Total federally distributable revenue is estimated at 11.09 trillion naira in 2023, while total revenue available to fund the 2023 federal budget is estimated at 9.73 trillion naira. This includes the revenue of 63 government-owned enterprises. Oil revenue is projected at 1.92 trillion naira. Non-oil taxes are estimated at 2.43 trillion naira. Federal government of Nigeria independent revenue are projected to be 2.21 trillion naira. Other revenues total 762 billion naira, while the retained revenue of the government-owned enterprises amount to 2.42 trillion naira. The 2023 appropriation bill aims to maintain the focus of MDAs on the revenue side of the budget and greater attention to internal revenue generation, sustenance of revenue generation, sustenance of revenue diversification strategy will further increase the non-oil revenue share of total revenue. A total of expenditure of 20.51 trillion naira is proposed for the federal government in 2023. This includes 2.42 trillion naira spending by government-owned enterprises. The proposed 20.15 trillion naira 2023 expenditure comprises A, statutory transfers of 744.1 billion naira, B, non-debt recurrent costs of 8.27 trillion naira, C, personal costs of 4.9 trillion naira, D, pensions, gratuities, and retirees' benefits of 854.8 billion naira, E, overheads of 1.1 trillion naira, F, capital expenditure of 5.35 trillion naira, including the capital component of statutory transfers, G, debt service of 6.31 trillion naira, and H, sinking fund of 247.73 billion naira to retire certain maturing bonds. We expect total fiscal operations of the federal government to result in a deficit of 10.8 trillion naira. This represents 4.78% of estimated GDP, above the 3% threshold set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. As envisaged, the law we need to exceed this threshold considering the need to continue to tackle the existential security challenges facing the country. We plan to finance the deficit mainly by new borrowings totaling 8.80 trillion naira, 206.18 billion naira from privatization proceeds, and 1.77 trillion naira drawdowns on bilateral, multilateral loans secured for specific development projects and programs. Over time, we have resorted to borrowing to finance our fiscal gaps. We have used loans to finance critical development projects and programs aimed at further improving our economic environment and enhance the delivery of public services to our people. As we are aware, we have witnessed two economic recessions within the period of this administration. A direct result of this is the significant decline in our revenue generation capacity. In those cases, we had to spend our way out of the recession, resulting in higher public debt and debt service. It is unlikely that our recovery from each of the two recessions would have been as fast without a sustained government expenditure funded by debt. In line with our plan to accompany annual budget with finance bills, partly to support the realization of fiscal projection, current tax and fiscal law regulations are being reviewed to produce a draft finance bill 2022. It is our intention that once ongoing consultations are completed, the Finance Bill 2022 will be submitted to the National Assembly to be considered alongside the 2023 Appropriation Bill. To ensure fiscal sustainability, we will further improve our business enabling environment, accelerate current revenue-based fiscal consolidation efforts, and strengthen our expenditure and debt management. Distinguished senators, honorable members, you may recall that we earlier integrated the budget of government-owned enterprises into the federal government's 2019 budget submission. This has helped to enhance the comprehensiveness and transparency of the federal government budget. It has, however, come to my attention that government-owned enterprises liaise directly with relevant NAS committees to have their budget passed and issued to them directly. I would like to implore the leadership of the National Assembly to ensure that the budget I laid before here today, which includes those of the government-owned enterprises, be returned to the presidency when first. The current practice, where some committees of the National Assembly purport to pass budgets for government-owned enterprises, which are at variance with the budgets sanctioned by me, and communicate such directly to the MDAs, is against the rules and needs to stop, please. Nigeria requires okay, it is still my time. It is still my time. Nigeria requires a huge outlay of resources to close current infrastructure gaps and boost its economic performance. Government will develop projects that are good candidates for public-private partnership by their nature for private and sector participation. Distinguished senators, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, over the course of this administration, we have embarked on a number of reforms in the public finance management space. These reforms are bearing fruits, and we have seen some of the benefits that return to a predictable January to December fiscal year for the federal government of Nigeria budget. Earlier this year, I was briefed of the impressive performance of the Nigeria in the Open Budget Survey. It's the third best or most improved country in the world. Nothing the global average score in budget transparency and exceeding the global average in public participation. I command the Budget Office of the Federation and the Supervising Ministry of Finance and National Planning, the National Assembly leadership, the relevant appropriation and finance committees, as well as non-state actors who have worked tirelessly in pushing for greater transparency and accountability in our budget process. We need to sustain and institutionalize the gains of these reforms. To this end, I have directed the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning to immediately work on mainstreaming these reforms and work with the National Assembly on passing an organic budget law, which I hope to assent to before the end of this administration. The government notes with dismay the crisis that has paralyzed activities in the public universities in the country. We expect the staff of these institutions to show a better appreciation of the current state of affairs in the country. In the determined effort to resolve the issue, we have provided a total of 470 billion naira in the 2023 budget from our constrained resources for revitalization and salary enhancements in the tertiary institutions. Distinguished senators and honorable members, it is instructive to know that today government alone cannot provide the resources required for funding tertiary education. In most countries, the cost of education is jointly shared between the government and the people, especially at the tertiary level. It is imperative, therefore, that we introduce a more sustainable model of funding tertiary education. The government remains committed to the implementation of agreements reached with staff union within available resources. This is why we have remained resolute that we will not sign any agreement that we would be unable to implement. Individual institutions would be encouraged to keep faith with any government reached in due course to ensure stability in the educational sector. The government is equally committed to improving the quality of education at other levels. Recently, we implemented various incentives aimed at motivating and enhancing teachers' development in our schools. In the health sector, the government intends to focus attention on equipping existing hospitals and rehabilitating infrastructure. Emphasis will also be on local production of basic medicines and vaccines. As human capital is the most critical resource for national development, our overall policy thrust is to expand our investment in education, health, and social protection. To harness the potentials of all Nigerian women and enable them to productively contribute to the economy, We will continue to prioritize women's empowerment programs across various NDAs in 2023. Government is very concerned about the high food prices in the country. Various measures are being implemented to address the structural factors underlying the issue. We will also step up current efforts aimed at boosting food production and distribution in the country. You will recall our efforts in improving production of fertilizer, rice, maize, cassava, among other initiatives. Government is not unaware of the challenges confronting the manufacturing sector. We will ensure effective implementation of policy measures aimed at positioning the manufacturing sector to generate more foreign exchange in the near future. We are also committed to improving the business environment to stimulate local and foreign investment. We ratified the Safe Schools Declaration in 2019. We remain committed to the effective implementation of our Safe Schools policy. A total of 15.2 billion naira has been specifically provided in the 2023 budget to scale up current measures to provide safer and conducive learning environment in our schools. The government remains firmly committed to the security of life, property, and investment across the country. Accordingly, defense and internal security continue to be accorded top priority in 2023. Current efforts to properly equip and motivate our valiant personnel in the armed forces, police, and paramilitary units will be sustained. I assure you, insecurity, especially banditry and kidnapping, will be significantly curtailed before the end of this administration. We will redouble our efforts to ensure we leave a legacy of a peaceful, prosperous, and secure nation. Mr. Senate President, Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable members of the National Assembly, let me conclude my address today by again expressing my deep appreciation for your enormous support, patriotic zeal, and cooperation in our efforts to accelerate the socio-economic development of our country and improve the lives of our people. I appreciate the effort and commitment of the leadership and staff of the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, especially the Budget Office of the Federation, who have worked hard to achieve early submission of the 2023 appropriation bill. The 2023 budget proposal is a product of interagency collaboration, extensive stakeholder consultation, and productive engagements. I would therefore like to acknowledge the efforts of the media, the organized private sector, civil society organizations, and our development partners for their contributions in the process of preparing the budget. Considering the challenging situation in our country presently, we must continue to cooperate and collaborate to ensure fiscal stability, macroeconomic stability, and smooth transition to the incoming administration. This administration remains resolutely committed to our goals of improving the living standards of our people and effective delivery of public services. Distinguished and honorable members of the National Assembly, although no single government can solve all the problems of our country during its own tenure, I have no doubt that you share our aspiration. The 2023 transition budget is designed to address critical issues and lay a solid foundation for the incoming administration. Excuse me. It is with great pleasure, therefore, that I lay before this distinguished joint session of the National Assembly the 2023 proposal of the federal government of Nigeria. I thank you most sincerely for your attention. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
President Muhammadu Buhari has just laid the 2023 budget of fiscal sustainability and transition of 20.15 trillion naira. Well, the president says that the budget actually is targeted at reducing poverty and give greater attention to internal revenue generation. Well, he said that the federal government will ensure fiscal stability, ensure smooth transition of the incoming government. Where the 2023 budget has statutory transfers as 744.1 trillion, non-debt recurrent 8.2 trillion, personnel 4.9 trillion, while overhead is 1.1 trillion, and capital component of 5.3 trillion naira.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Distinguished and honorable colleagues, the next item on our order paper is the vote of thanks by the Right Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker. His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Oshibajo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, GCON, and Vice President of the Federal Republic, the Chief Justice of the Federation, Deputy President of the Senate, and Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, principal officers of both the Senate and the House, distinguished senators and honorable members of the House of Representatives, Your Excellencies, the Executive Governors here present, the National Chairman of all political parties, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, the Chief of Staff to the President, Mr. Boss Mustafa, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Please allow me at this point to adopt the remainder of the protocol as already established by the Senate President. On behalf of the National Assembly, I thank the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for coming today to present the 2023 Appropriation Bill for parliamentary consideration and approval. As many of our guests may have noticed, we are here in a makeshift environment whilst the main chambers of the National Assembly undergoes extensive renovation. I can say that many of you are not as comfortable as you ordinarily would be, but please take us as you find us. I hope that this budget for this year has accommodated the completion of the chambers. Today's presentation is historic because it is the last such presentation by President Muhammadu Buhari. It is also the last time the 9th Assembly will convene to receive the President for this purpose. We are once more reminded of the finite nature of public service and the obligation to make the most of our time to deliver on our promises to the Nigerian people. It is often said that it's not how well you start, but how strong you finish. We intend here in the 9th Assembly to finish very strong. I assure you the National Assembly will prioritize this bill and ensure it is passed before the end of the year, as is the practice of the 9th Assembly. However, we will not, in the quest for timely passage, fail to do the due diligence expected of us by the Nigerian people. The reforms to the budget process initiated in the 9th Assembly have helped streamline the appropriations process and the oversight system. We have set a standard for others to match or answer for. This is to the credit of all those who worked to achieve these outcomes, particularly the senators and the honorable members. I have often said that the budget reflects priorities. National security, healthcare, education, public infrastructure, and human capital development are the priorities we have pursued in the 9th Assembly. Every appropriation act we have considered and passed has reflected these priorities to different degrees. The 2023 Appropriation Act will be a budget of consolidation, our last best opportunity to ensure that ongoing projects across the country are completed before the end of the administration. Of course, government is a continuum, and it will fall to our successors in office to continue the development initiatives of this administration and see them to completion. However, though governance continues, despite government changes, priorities may not remain the same. As such, we must endeavor to see to it that the priorities and projects we have prioritized are adequately funded and fully implemented as we continue to do the work we have been elected to do until the last moment of our tenure. Mr. President, permit me to convey the disquiet in the House of Representatives arising from the reports of a massive decline in the volume of crude oil exports due primarily to theft and diversion by criminal elements. It is the sense of the House of Representatives that those engaged in these activities are agents of economic sabotage, determined to bring our country to its knees. Therefore, our position is that their actions constitute treason against our country, for which they and their enablers, whoever they may be, must be held accountable to the fullest extent permitted by law. Nigerians no longer want to hear about crude oil theft. Question has now become, what are we doing about it? Therefore, we are urging a swift and systemic overhaul of the systems in place to protect the country's oil and gas resources. Evidently, the arrangements in place are no longer adequate. As such, there is an obvious need for improvements to stop the loss of income occasioned by this ongoing sabotage. This is especially so at this time when the conditions and circumstances of our national finances require significant borrowing to finance government operations, sustain investments in infrastructure and national security, and improve the living conditions of the Nigerian people. It is noteworthy that Mr. President, the Senate President, and now my good self, Speaker of the House, without comparing notes, dwelled extensively on this subject. This underscores its importance and imperative to act and act quickly. As we consider the 2023 appropriation bill, I wish to remind the heads of ministries, departments, and executive agencies that the National Assembly expects thorough accounting for previous appropriations, disbursements, and expenditures. Where such accounts are not forthcoming, we will demand them, and we will exercise the full authority of Parliament to hold to account those who fail to provide the records we need to make informed decisions on the appropriation bill. This is a priority for us as we wind down and begin compiling our service records for history and as a guide to those who will continue from where we stop. Just as the Ninth Assembly has reformed the appropriations process to ensure timely budget passage, we also intend to leave a legacy of transparency and accountability as a standard for the future. I thank His Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, DCFR, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, the Budget Office, Honorable Ministers, and all those who contributed to drafting this appropriation bill. The National Assembly will build on your efforts to deliver an appropriation act that provides real solutions to national problems, unlocks economic potential, secures our country, and brings a future we can all look forward to and be proud of. Finally, let me appreciate the clerk to the National Assembly, Architect Olatunde Ojo, and the entire management and staff whose efforts have made this joint session a resounding success. May God keep and guide us all, and God bless our Federal Republic.
That was the vote of thanks by Speaker, House of Representatives Femi Gbajabiamila, who has assured the President that the National Assembly will expeditiously consider this budget, and he also said there will be adequate scrutiny of the budget.
Well, distinguished and honored members, National Anthem.
And that marks the end of the chapter of budget presentation by President Muhammadu Buhari to the joint session of the National Assembly as he makes his way out of the chamber of the House of Representatives. The President will not be coming to the National Assembly again to present the budget to the joint session. Anytime he will be coming here will now be as a guest and not for this purpose. Well, the presentation of the budget of fiscal sustainability and transition by the President has domiciled at the National Assembly. Now, the budget is now at the confine of the National Assembly for legislative scrutiny. Any moment from now, the National Assembly will now have to, in the plenary, move to refer the bill, the money bill, to its committee for scrutiny, and that is now the continuation of the budget process. At this point in time, I will now hand over to my colleague at the lobby, Vivian Idepeso, who want to speak with some of the people looking for the budget presentation, and she will be continuing with these last broadcasts. Now, Vivian, Over to you. It appears that my colleague there at the moment is not set for that. We'll get back to her. But it's very significant to know that, like the president did say, that there is very need to discontinue fuel subsidy in 2023. As he said, it's not sustainable. And we did know that while the National Assembly were considering the medium-term expenditure framework of 2023-2025, the Senate did approve 3.6 trillion for 6 months of the fuel subsidy in 2023. But the House of Representatives did approve 1.7 trillion, which means there will be need for a conference committee to reconcile both resolutions.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Uche Ikunife, your impression about the budget just presented by Mr. President? Yeah, the President's budget presentation was quite explosive and very, very encompassing. And I can call that budget of consolidation. Consolidation in the sense that this is a very remarkable time, a time when the government is coming to an end, and this will also be the last budget this assembly will consider. Therefore, we will ensure that the majority of the ongoing projects are going to be the focus of our attention when we come back for consideration of the budget. Now that he has laid the budget, all the committees will go back and begin to look at the budget itself, the content of each agency, each ministry's budget, and be able to consider to ensure that the priority areas of government are being funded. Mr. President had a special request in that budget presentation. What's your take? Our take is that we have to look at his request. These are the interest of Nigerians. The budget is for Nigerians. Therefore, the interest of Nigeria supersedes whichever interest we are going to entertain in that budget. Thank you. Thank you. As we await other respondents, the budget has been laid and now it is for the members of the both chambers of the National Assembly to get to work, and which will then be that of budget defense ministries, agencies will come in to defend their budgets. We do hand you over to our normal programming. I am Vivian Itepepo. Thank you.
Over the years.
There are several ways of shouting yay. You say yay, people will run. You say yay, yay, yeah, they will dance. It's the same yay. We can still say